My name is Gary Files and I'm the director of the Kielder Observatory in Northumberland, the United Kingdom. And I've came here to sunny California, to Pasadena, for Spacefest 2014. And the reason I've came here is because some of the most important people in the history of space exploration have gathered here, including men who walked on the moon. Born in 1936 in Camden, New Jersey, Sy Liebergot is a retired NASA flight controller who served during the Apollo program. Liebergot was the lead EECOM flight controller throughout all Apollo manned missions and was responsible for the electrical and environmental systems on board the command module. In 1970, he was a key part of the team that safely guided Apollo 13 and the crew back to the Earth, following the explosion which crippled the spacecraft.
My name is Sy Liebergot, and I spent my whole work career, working in our space program here in the United States, specifically as an Apollo flight controller, Apollo EECOM we called it. And some people call it a highlight. It's not a highlight for me, but I happened to be sitting at my console when the oxygen tank blew up on Apollo 13, and it ended up in my lap, and I had to deal with that. So that was probably the most stressful time in my career. We didn't have a good feel for the history we were making because we were doing our job that we were trained for, and of course everybody will give you those cliched statements, I was just doing my job. Well, the job turned out to be one of the most exciting jobs you could have ever had, and in retrospect, kind of look over your shoulder and he says, boy, we do all that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the thing that's ingrained in the public's mind is, of course, Apollo 13.
Oh, yes.
How did that feel, Si, to be involved in such an incredible series of events?
Apollo 13, happened on the last hour of my 8-hour work shift. That's why one of my talks I called the longest hour, and it was the longest hour. I got to tell you, time seems to dilate when you're in a high stress situation like that, and you're not conscious of the passage of time. So probably that's good, because that means you can deal with the problem at hand and not be concerned about time. First thing was to admit that we had a problem. And what was the nature of the problem? What can I do to alleviate the problem? It's all part of our training. And can I find the source of the problem? All of which the answer was no, really. We could not locate the source of the problem because it was just unbelievable that we would blow a tank of oxygen up and it would blow off the side of the spacecraft and send the spacecraft into wild gyrations, and there was alarms sounding on board. It was really an unbelievable time. But once I realized that it was real and I settled down, probably within 20 minutes, to try to deal with it. The problem was that I really didn't believe that we could not solve the problem, nor could my flight director, Gene Kranz. And that's when I get to the point and I say, we both realize that denial is not just a river in Egypt, because we were both in denial. And once we realized that, we fell to. I made sure the flight director knew how much we had lost, and we weren't landing on the moon, that was for sure.
How long did it actually take before you realized they weren't going to go to the moon?
Probably 20 minutes when I realized we had a real problem. We lost oxygen tank number 2, which cracked the line in oxygen tank number 1, and now we had an hour and 54 minutes before the crew was going to be dead. And we hadn't even turned on the lunar module yet. So it was a highly stressed time, but we got through it because at one point, Kranz says, let's just settle down and don't make things worse by guessing.
Okay, now let's everybody keep cool. We got LEM still attached. The LEM spacecraft's good, so if we need to get back home, we got a LEM to do a good portion of it with. So we're in good shape if we need to get home. Let's solve the problem, but let's not make it any worse by guessing.
He had such a command figure that he could calm everybody down, and he left me alone because he knew I was working the problem. And it was very difficult. You know, I tell people, you know, when you get into a panic situation, panic comes up as a gorge in your throat, and it's up to you to succumb to it or shove it back down. And you know, I hate that old cliche saying, it said, "Well, my training kicked in," and that's not what kicks in. What kicks in is nothing. You just adopt your training, and your training consisted of calm and working the problem, being very logical and calm about it, and using all the resources you had at hand, like your backroom specialist. And it you know, it didn't make any difference. We just couldn't fix it.
If there was any sort of message, Si, that you could give to the next generation of scientists, the next generation of space explorers, what would that be? What have we learned from the Apollo program?
Well, what we learned from the Apollo program is what I show, and I do a motivational speech to mid-schoolers, and I give them a little flavor of Apollo 13 to show how incredible that was. And then I put up a bunch of slides to tell them how to live their lives, you know, like set short-term goals, then long-term goals. But the main thing I give them, and this is apropos to what we're talking about, what is the final slide is, it says the can't word. Don't let anybody tell you you can't, which I was subjected to most of my life. Once you adopt the fact that you can do something in your life, then adopt it. And if we adopted that for all of our space endeavors, to ignore the can't word, the naysayers. What did that one vice president of ours say? The nattering nabobs of negativism. Ignore those people. And remember, we were young, and you know, we were fearless at the time. And I mean, after all, nobody, as I say in my talks, nobody had ever told us young engineers that we couldn't successfully land humans on another planet. They would now. They would always point out there's got to be something go wrong, and risk-taking is risk-taking, and you eliminate the risks as best you can and go for it.